We're speaking about the budget that's going to be happening today. And in studio with us is Mr. Aaron Moses, advisor to the Prime Minister.
No, I need to correct you.
Oh, I'm
Project
sorry.
manager.
Project manager.
Of a
Sorry.
public sector reform
Oh my
project.
goodness. Well, we need to. Communication went bad somewhere along the way, right? So, welcome this morning. How are you doing this morning?
I am great.
Okay, good.
Good to be here.
All right. So let's talk about this budget that's happening today. When exactly is it happening? What time?
Well, the budget will be read at 10 o'clock at the Trade Center, and it will be carried live on most television and radio networks. And so we expect to have an extremely large listening and looking audience because the budget typically is one of the seminal events in the management of a country. And I think all Grenadians and international organizations and people in the region generally pay attention to budgets. Primarily because a budget is presentation of your revenue and estimates for the ensuing year. And typically that is supported with the government's policy statements that will inform the nation as to what the prospects are, what can we expect. And that information can influence and economic and social activities in the country. So from that perspective, all Grenadians should be paying attention to what is happening in the environment, what is expected, because that will influence your plans, it will influence your expectations, it will influence your life. And so from that perspective, it is a very important event in our life.
Is the public invited to the event?
Certainly, the public is invited. It's open. It's a public event. And like I said, it will be carried live on most networks.
Okay.
Are you anticipating a large crowd at the Trade Center, or how many people can you actually hold?
Typically, most budgets do have a fairly sizable crowd in attendance, and I see absolutely no reason why this one should not, attract a fairly large gathering. There seem to be a heightened expectation about this budget for reasons which I don't really know. I don't know if it's because it is delayed from in the practice of the last 3 years when it was held at the end of the last year. I suspect too that given the extremely difficult environment in which we operate, that sort of impresses upon people the need to be alert to the environment and what is happening. I also suspect that the fact that people are saying that we're in an election year. I don't know. Elections, at least 16 months away. Some people seem to think that may be the last budget because, as you know, the Prime Minister has the authority to call an election when he sees fit. So that could be any time. And so it may very well be the last budget, or it may be the penultimate budget before the next elections. So I think all those factors seem to have piqued interest and the level of expectations among, certain segments of the society have placed a lot of emphasis on this. I've heard it referred to as the mother of all budgets. I don't know what that means, but there seemed to be quite a bit of expectation,
So why the significant delay from December? Is that something normal to do? Is it legal for something like that to happen?
Well, constitutionally, a budget must be read before April. So you have up to the month of April within which you can read a budget. In our history, we have had budgets read from November, December, January, February, March, and my recollection once in April. So constitutionally, this is the time for budget. However, as a practice, the recent governments have been trying, and successfully so, reading budgets before the end of the year. I recall in August, the Prime Minister at a town hall session held at the Trade Center was unusual, but he outlined an exhaustive list of all the capital projects that the government plans to implement over the next 2 to 3 years. Typically, that is what is read in the budget. So from that perspective, a lot of the information that typical budgets present were already in the public domain. And so I suspect there would not be much surprises outside of those capital projects. And I think maybe the Minister of Finance, because of that fact, felt it was necessary to, give himself more time to formulate a budget that he thinks can deliver on the socio-economic plans of his government over the next year. So I can't say definitely for sure, but I can only postulate some reasons why we have in the budget being read today.
Would you say there are any advantages or disadvantages to reading it in March? And you said that you may have had a little more time to think about things. But.
Well, there are different arguments. There are some who argue that the fact that it has not been read could delay their plans. I don't think that should, given the fact that I mentioned you already know what are the major capital projects. But as any astute business person, you need to be analyzing your environment, you need to be up to date on what is transpiring in your country, and those externalities must inform your planning. So I don't think it is a major disadvantage. Ideally, some people would like to start the year with an open book, knowing all the parameters that can influence their lives, and that's desirable. But from my perspective, I don't think there are any disadvantages,
Do you know of any specific areas that they're going to put significant emphasis on during this year's budget?
Yes, and again, if you're paying attention, that's very easy to project. But before I do that, what does the budget do? Essentially, what the exercise today will do, and it's no different from past exercises, is that the Minister of Finance will scan the operating environment. He will look at what's been happening in the international economic environment. He will look at what's happening in the region, and he's going to get to the OECS and analyze the socio-economic environment there. Why is this important? We are part of an international community, we are an open economy, and what happens in the operating environment has a significant impact on what we do in Grenada. Then he's going to look at Grenada's performance over the last year. What were the targets we set ourselves? How did we perform? Did we meet our revenue targets? Were we able to constrain our expenditure? Were there any surpluses? What were the highlights? What would the government say were the things they achieved? Were there any extenuating shortcomings that negatively impacted their ability to achieve what they said they would do? And again, some of that information is already in the public domain because the government have been reporting quarterly on what has been transpiring. For instance, earlier or late last year, the information coming from the OECS region indicated that Grenada has turned the downward slide, moving from a 5.7% negative growth in 2009, that negative slide was reduced to 1.3% in 2010. And for the first part of last year, and hopefully the final figures will confirm that, we experienced positive growth during the year 2011. So that has already been known. So we expect confirmation that in fact the Grenadian economy has turned the corner, and we are beginning to see signs of economic growth. So he will also examine the prospects for the economy. What are the prospects, given the environmental conditions, given our resource base? What do we expect? Already, again, the country has been informed of the major economic transformative sectors that have been identified that the government thinks can transform the economy of Grenada. And consistent with that overarching strategy, he's going to outline what are the specific programs and projects under those 5 sectors that the government will embark on to achieve that overall strategy. So we expect to see or to be informed about what are the projects under the energy sector, what are the projects under the health and wellness sector, what are the projects in tourism, what are the projects in agribusiness, So there will be specifics under those specific categories.
Okay.
What do you think some of the big things that need to happen to promote growth
Well,
and get us from out of the downturn?
I would like to rephrase your question because I think we have a psychological preference in the past in this country that we seem to think that transformation can come from large projects. I don't hold that view. I think what we need is a mix of different economic activities. The major economic activities from a project standpoint, they do not deliver large quantities of jobs and necessarily, the big fillip that we seem to be looking forward to. Secondly, it's extremely difficult to mobilize finance anywhere in the world. So attracting major projects is not necessarily easy to do or the best thing to do. I think what we need to do is to achieve balanced economic activities in all sectors of the economy. Given our limited resource base, our resource base cannot support massive projects in anything. If you look at agro-processing, for instance, what is required is a number of small outfits to process our various agro-based resources in various sectors. We do not have the large resources to support any large manufacturing or agro-processing operation in Grenada from an agro-processing perspective. And we have been through this before. I served during the revolutionary era when we had a heavy focus on agro-processing and when we all felt that we had a tremendous amount of fruits and vegetables going to waste. But when we built our agro-processing plant, we found that our largest resource base was nutmeg pods, not mangoes, not other fruits and vegetables. So we have to be careful when we think in those terms. When we begin to export, for instance, non-traditional, I chaired the marketing board for 5 years in the early 90s, and our fruits were fantastic. We pioneered the export of golden apples during that period, Julie mangoes, and the market responded positively. But the supermarkets say, I'd like to have a container a month. We do not have that production capacity because we do not have orchards. So we have to be careful when we talk, in terms of those big projects. So our structure and resource base do not support that philosophical thinking. So we need a mix of, so yes, one or two big projects here, particularly in the tourism sector, but we need to be approaching a balanced development, looking at various activities in the various sectors. So I expect to see a range of different things across the board and not necessarily one massive big project, which will only contribute during the construction phase to, the economy, and sustainability after that will drop significantly. I think we need to begin to think differently and look at our economy from a different perspective.
Were you involved in the preparation of the budget?
Yes, I was.
Okay. All right.
What was it like being a part of that? A lot of sleepless nights? What sort of efforts?
Well, typically, and I have been involved in those exercises in the early part of my career. It is always a very demanding period. It takes a lot of work, as you said, long sleepless nights, crunching numbers, examining various permutations and options, to arrive at what is the optimum, solution. So it does take some challenge, and it involves a large team of persons, various technicians in various ministries making inputs and contributions. So it's not, it is an exercise that a lot of people contribute to.
Okay, great. Well, I think I should get my hat ready for the budget reading today. Yeah, we'll probably go down there and see what's going on in the Trade Center. So we want to thank you so much for coming in and sharing exactly what's going on with the budget, and just remind us as to the place and time. It's happening today, and persons can come down.
It's at 10 o'clock this morning at the Grenada Trade Center, and it's open to the public. So everybody is welcome, and I want to make a particular appeal to our students. I think all our students need to be paying attention to what is happening in your country, and this is an opportunity to be informed and to build your human capital.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Moses, for joining us this morning.